What started out as a peaceful protest at the headquarters of the National Human Rights Commission in Abuja today ended on a violent note after the Freedom Rally was disrupted by another group of protesters. Trouble started as both groups held their grounds on their demand for the release of Revolution Now leader Omoyele Sowore and other perceived political detainees, while one of the groups, led by Mr. Detention, asked the federal government to obey the order of the court and free Mr. Sowore and others held in custody. The opposing group insists they support the government and that the national interest supersedes individual interests. A co-convener of one of the groups, Mr. Detention, was attacked during the clash.
Placard-carrying youths demanding the release of the leader of Revolution Now protest, Omoyele Sowore, and other perceived political detainees. They're in front of the National Human Rights Commission building, seeking the attention of the Commission in realizing their demands. This is coming after the expiration of the 14-day ultimatum issued by a civil society group, Enough is Enough, to the federal government to release Mr. Sowore. Their conduct was peaceful until this second group of protesters arrived at the scene with their banners and placards showing support for the government. And then all was let loose, with one of the conveners of the group in the eye of the storm.
They came to beat us physically. As I speak to you now, some of our colleagues, we don't know their fate because they've chased them, and this happened in front of the security. We went to and tell the security to ensure that they separate at least these two rallies, because we are here before and all we are doing, we were just standing peacefully, calmly, trying to wait for the Executive Secretary of the National Human Rights Commission so that we can give him our demand.
The tension over, the leader of the second group, Ibrahim Danladi, claims that the Freedom Rally protesters hauled insults on them.
Nobody asks anybody to be violent or to be brutal against any other person, because the other people are doing what the other people are doing. They are doing it because it is inscribed in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria that every Nigerian has the right to protest, either for or against. It was because they started insulting the people that we came together. That was the reason why some of them started agitating. That why will they be insulting them because they are equally Nigerians?
This sort of clash may not be far from over, as the Freedom Rally protesters insist that they will not be deterred in their actions until Sowore and other detainees are released. The police has its job cut out for it to avoid a repeat of today's violent clash. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Earlier today, Justice Ahmed Mohammed of the Federal High Court in Abuja withdrew from the fundamental rights enforcement suit instituted by the #RevolutionNow protest convener, Mr. Omoyele Sowore, seeking an order for his release. Justice Mohammed ruled that he could not hear Sowore's case, saying that it was the fair, just and proper thing to do in view of the previous publications by Sowore's medium, Sahara reporters, accusing him of taking bribe. Justice Mohammed withdrew from the case following allegations of bias.
The case has been sent back to the Chief Judge for reassignment because His Lordship, the Honorable Justice Mohammed, raised some issues regarding two publications by Sahara reporters which refer to our Lordship handling of some matters. His Lordship therefore felt that since justice is rooted in confidence, he will not want a situation where the decisions of the court will be subject to interpretation contrary to the justice of the matter. We counsel on all sides felt that the observation was proper and that the best thing to do was for His Lordship to recuse himself, and that was what happened in the case of Bashir Abiola and the Federal Republic of Nigeria, whereby 8 justices of the Supreme Court are to recuse themselves based on an earlier publication which had led to a libel suit or institution of libel cases against the Concord newspaper.
Staying with legal matters, the founder of Sotitobira Miracle Ministry, Babatunde Alfa, and 6 others have been arraigned before a magistrate court in Akure, Edo State capital, over a missing 1-year-old child, Gold Kolawole. They are facing a 3-count charge bordering on conspiracy to commit felony in the alleged kidnap of Kolawole, aiding the kidnap, and destruction of evidence that would lead to the speedy investigation of the matter. The mother of the child, Modupe Kolawole, had raised an alarm after her son went missing during a church service in November. Rumors of the child's body being exhumed from the church premises had triggered an attack that led to the burning of the church and the killing of at least 2 people, including a policeman. Meanwhile, the Federal High Court in Lagos has refused to grant the former governor of Abuja State, Kalu, a post-conviction bail, ordering that he remains in the prison custody until his appeal has been heard. Justice Mohammed Liman wondered why the speedy filing of the motion for bail when the appeal against Mr. Kalu's conviction has not been heard. The former governor had filed an application for post-conviction bail pending his appeal against his jail sentence based on health grounds, which he claims medical facilities in the prison could not handle. He also informed the court of his role as chief whip of the Senate, saying that the interests of his constituents would be in jeopardy if he was kept behind bars. However, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the EFCC, opposed the bail on the grounds that bail is for the accused persons on the presumption of innocence and could no longer enjoy such a privilege since he had been convicted. The Federal High Court had on December the 5th jailed Mr. Kalu for 12 years after finding him guilty of 7.56 billion naira fraud. Still on legal matters, the appeal court today set aside the judgment of Justice Iyang Ekwo disqualifying Senator Biobarakuma Degi Eremienyo as the deputy governorship candidate of the APC in the just concluded Edo State governorship elections. The lower court judge had disqualified the deputy governorship candidate from participating in the November the 16th governorship elections for allegedly supplying false information to INEC in the build-up to the election. But in a unanimous judgment of a 3-man panel, the appellate court held that the Justice Ekwo erred in law and in breach of the appellant's right to fair hearing. While the defense counsel refused to speak after the court's judgment, counsel to Senator Degi Eremienyo praised the judgment.
First, we're grateful to God Almighty for the turnout of events and the outcome of today's judgment. We're equally very grateful to the Court of Appeal for courageously upholding the law and reiterating the correct position of the law, contrary to the findings of the learned trial judge, that Senator Biobarakuma Degi Eremienyo was not qualified by virtue of mere variation in his names. The court has held that a person who is qualified under the Constitution cannot be otherwise disqualified under an inferior law. Most especially, the senator in question actually made proper explanation as to the seeming discrepancy in his name. So those discrepancies can never be elevated to the level of disqualification because there was no falsehood whatsoever. And the learned trial judge, with great respect, misconceived the position of the law by misplacing the burden of proof, saying that he ought to have executed a deed poll rather than the affidavit of explanation which he actually tendered before the court prior to the contemplation of this suit. So in a nutshell, we're grateful to God that the judgment of the lower court is effectively set aside. Senator Degi Biobarakuma was qualified and is qualified eminently to contest for the office of deputy governor, which he did, and by the glory of God, that election was won by Senator Biobarakuma and his running mates, and his principal, Chief David Lyon.
And away from legal matters now, the governor of Edo State, Mr. Godwin Obaseki, believes that the fire incident that razed the Ekiosa market and some parts of the Edo State Development Property Agency in Benin City was not an accident. Mr. Obaseki alleges that the incident, alongside other recent fire disasters in the state, is coming from those who want to see his administration fail. He made the comments after inspecting the affected places in the company of members of the State Executive Council and security chiefs, where he also donated 100 million naira to victims of the inferno in addition to rebuilding the market.
I am not surprised because there's been boasts over the last several weeks that Edo will be made ungovernable for me. So I'm almost certain that these incidents are not unconnected with a plan to destabilize the state. And as you can see from this building, if you thought the incidents in the Ogida market and the Tiosa market were accidents, you cannot tell me that the fire on the 6th floor of this building could have been an accident. These are clear incidents of arson. And as a government, we will do all that is necessary and required to make sure we get to the bottom of it. And I'm sure you'll be able to apprehend the culprits and they will be dealt with, no matter who is protecting them. The response was not slow. We got wind of the incident because I passed by the market 3 hours earlier to go to the Edo Central. We got wind of the incident about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and calls were put through to all the fire services in the city. A squad specifically was dispatched from University of Benin Teaching Hospital. And by the time they got to the junction close by, they were attacked, which is the pattern, which is last week when a similar situation occurred, the team dispatched from the military fire wing, the S&T, was similarly attacked and some of the personnel were injured. So it's become part of a plan. I mean, because it's part of a plan, that's become, a recurring decimal. The fire services come in and then people attack them. Even if they came late, is that enough reason to stop them from assisting, to stop the rest of the... So it's not a valid excuse at all.